Namaste, my friend. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga Conference, Grace in an Age of Distraction. My name is Happy Jack, the founder of Happy Jack Yoga and a Master of Divinity student here at Harvard. And this is our opportunity bringing together beautiful souls from all around the world, from all walks of life, people who are sharing their story, sharing their lives, sharing their wisdom with us. Over 40 beautiful souls are speaking here, and over 4,000 of you are joining us. So thank you so much for being a part of this historic event at Harvard. We're definitely going to have time for Q&A today. So if you have questions on your heart, please have those ready. Raise your virtual hand, share them in the chat, get our attention in any way that you can. And we're going to bring our esteemed speaker on while we introduce and say a few words. Please welcome, it's such an honor to have Syamarani with us here today, a legend in the field of Bhakti Yoga. And also, I just want to say a few words here. I'll read a bio and then say a few words. As a teenage art student in the 1960s of New York City, she became one of the first disciples of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the world-renowned founder Acharya of ISKCON. Now, in those historical times, the ancient tradition exploded across the West and became colloquially known as in popular culture as the Hare Krishna movement. Under Srila Prabhupada's guidance, Syamarani Dasi painted some of the most recognizable illustrations in his translations and commentaries, including the Bhagavad Gita as it is. This volume alone, featuring Dadi's work, has been translated into more than 60 languages since 1972, has sold more than 40 million copies, and has become the most popular version of the key Indian spiritual text, the Bhagavad Gita. Now, in November of 1977, Srila Prabhupada departed from the vision of the world. In 1992, Syamarani met his spiritual successor and intimate friend, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. Just before his divine departure, Srila Prabhupada had requested Srila Narayan Maharaj to continue his mission. Under the latter's tutelage, Syamarani painted one of the most iconic images in Bhakti Yoga, Seva Kunj. The painting was installed with an elaborate ceremony at the pilgrimage site of Srila Rupa Sanatan Gaudiya Math in the holy city of Vrindavan, India. Syamarani Dasi's artistic prowess is only matched by her profound devotion and humility. As one of the few female gurus in her lineage, she gives initiation into the chanting of the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, and other spiritual and priestly rites. She also fully engages in educating students and seekers in the beautiful truth of Vedic culture. This system of ancient spiritual, philosophical, and cultural traditions is based on the sacred texts known as the Vedas, propounded in such volumes as the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And I just want to say, it is such an honor to have you here with us. You know, you were one of the very few speakers who I have yet to cross paths with. We're just meeting today, but you came so highly recommended that we had to extend an invite. And, you know, for myself, I was saying just before we went live, I'm living at the Boston Temple Ashram right now, and you're a legend there. You know, most of the beautiful paintings up around that building have your nameplate underneath, you know, created by you. And one thing I love to do in the evenings is reading the Prabhupada Leelamrita, a book about his leelas, his stories. And there's a chapter about his time in Boston, and you're such a huge part of those early days. So again, it's such an honor to have you here with us. And my friends, the session of today is called The Art of Spiritual Life. If you are ready to get started with Syamarani, please throw your arms in the air and loudly chant, Haribol. Welcome, Syamarani.
Haribol.
So beautiful to have you here with us. Oh, it might have froze, but I see Sarah and George and everybody moving. I bet she's right
Thank
back.
you.
Oh, yeah, you're back now.
You're such, okay. It's wonderful how you're such an inspiring speaker that
Yeah.
you could enthuse 4,000 people to join your Zoom. I think that's amazing.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not me. It's the speakers that we have. That is what is inspiring people to sign up. It's truly it's beautiful souls like yourself that have generously agreed to share your time and to share your life. You know, it's really an honor to have you. Like we've had younger students, you know, people who are just new to their bhakti path, and that can be helpful because it's maybe a little more relatable, but you have a lifetime of wisdom, and we're grateful for this association. And if we could just start with, well, first, what is the best way? You have a few different names, and I want to address you with the right way. What would you prefer that we address you by?
Well, why don't I tell a story about that?
I love it.
That's
What a great place to start.
okay. So I met Srila Prabhupada, who had come a year earlier from India, more specifically from Vrindavan, the holy land where Krishna, the Supreme Lord, appeared in this world 5,000 years earlier. So he came in 1965 to show the example of when one surrenders to the Lord takes care of everything, because he came with 40 rupees, which was equivalent at that time to $7, but which was not exchangeable. So by Krishna's arrangement, somebody got him, it's a long story, but finally he opened a temple at 26 Second Avenue on the Lower East Side. And I met him, I believe it was September of 1966. And I was walking through the park to visit a friend on the other side of the park. And there was Srila Prabhupada and hundreds of, a few disciples, maybe 10, 15, but everybody else was just in the park. And so he was chanting, they were responding. And my first impression was, he looks like a genie from another planet, that he just flew down here, because he was, you know how you hear about flying genies on carpets. So he was sitting on this oriental carpet. There were flutes and drums. And so then after he left, they rolled up the drum, the rug, went back to their place. I'd never heard of Krishna before. And so a strange man walked up to me and said, "Would you like to go to the temple?" I said, okay, not knowing what it was. And so he brought me to the temple, which was about 10 blocks away, and then absolutely disappeared. And then at that time, there was the war in Vietnam. And so we were all, not only the war internationally, but in homes and families, communities. And so I overheard one devotee telling another that the Swami, he was called that then, the Swami just said that whenever the devotees have an argument, they should consider it like clouds passing by. Nobody takes seriously when clouds pass by. So I thought that's pretty amazing in this world of strife. And then somebody invited me upstairs, and I was thinking, like so many other young people in that 60s time of revolution and LSD and all kinds of looking for higher consciousness. So I was in the middle of thinking that I'm God. And so the first thing that Prabhupada said, there were about 30 of us in his personal room behind what we called the altar room. He said, "This is nothing that you have made up. This process is very old, very simple, and sublime. We are eternal, and everything else is temporary." Then he invited me to come to his morning programs. He said, "Do you live near?" And because I thought I was the all-pervading God, I said, "Oh, yes, I live very near." He said, "Good, then you can come to the morning programs." So because Srila Prabhupada is what's called in Sanskrit, Satya Sankalpa, which means whatever he says happens. So I ended up trekking down from the Bronx to his Lower East Side temple every day, every morning, with the 5 trains that it took. And then after a month, I began thinking of initiation. So he asked me if I could follow the rules and regulations, which was no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat, fish, egg eating, no coffee, tea, cigarettes taking. I said, okay. And then, so a few days later, I was initiated as Yamarani. And he explained to me that Yamarani is the original queen of the Jadu dynasty of like hundreds of thousands of years ago. And so he said, so I'm naming you Yamarani, but you're Yamarani Dasi, which means servant. I don't become her. We're not like impersonalists and thinking that we're merging into a person and becoming that. But you're Yamarani Dasi. Yamarani is the original queen of the Jadu dynasty. And I was so like out of it at the time, like were most 60s hippies, that I just said to him, because he said this is like a long time ago. So I pretended I was an old lady and I said, "Oh, really?" And so he gave me a quick, what, look, but then continued. He was always so tolerant. So he gave me the name Yamarani. Later on, a couple of years later, he said, just like Yamarani was always helpful to her husband, King Jadu, so you are always helpful to your god brothers. So I had the name Yamarani I still do, but now I have the nickname Syamarani, which I'm called by most everybody. And how that happened was, as you read, I met his spiritual successor, and intimate friend, and also Shiksha disciple, means he was Prabhupada's disciple, but not initiated by him, because when he met Prabhupada, he was already initiated by Prabhupada's sannyas guru. So I went along being Yamarani. And then in 1992, he asked me to paint a certain painting, which was later on became, you mentioned it, internationally famous as Seva Kunj, where Krishna, give a poster, where Krishna is serving his feminine counterpart, his most beloved, Srimati Radhika. You know, we chant Hare Krishna. So Hare, Krishna represents Krishna, and Hare represents Radharani. It means that she who controls Krishna's heart. So after I completed that painting, Srila Gurudev, I'll call him, Srila Narayan Maharaj, he told me, now Prabhupada inspired me, your Prabhupada inspired me to give you the nickname Syamarani, because we have Krishna, one of Krishna's names is Sham. And Sham means that, Sham means a complexion of like bluish gray, like a cloud. So he's Sham, and she is Shama, which means the feminine counterpart of Sham. So because of that, because you completed this painting, your Srila Prabhupada inspired me to give you the nickname Syamarani. Radha is one of her names is Syamarani, the queen of Sham. So you're her Dasi, you're her servant. And so, and because Vrindavan, a lot of things just to answer your question, Vrindavan is a place where the relationship with Krishna is very intimate, because Krishna doesn't act like God. He forgets he's God in Vrindavan. And the name Jadharani, the servant of the king, the servant of the queen of King Jadu, that's the place of opulence, where sometimes Krishna exhibits 4 arms. He shows his universal form to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, where there are thousands of suns and moons, and the ocean is his stomach, and one eye is the moon, one eye is the sun. So that's an opulent feature of Krishna. So Prabhupada wants you to come to a more intimate relationship now in Vrindavan. So he's inspiring me to call you Syamarani, the servant of Shama, or Srimati Radhika. And that's how that happened.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for giving that backstory. So we'll go with Syamarani as an addressing for this conversation.
Okay.
Would you share a little bit what was it about bhakti that had you stay? So we got a sense of kind of how you discovered Prabhupada and how that initially happened, but what was it about this practice that had you decide to, hey, you know what? I'm committed. I'm gonna do this. And now here you are all these decades later still doing it. What was it about the practice or the association or the texts or the why are you still here?
You
Respectfully.
named it. You absolutely named it.
Ah,
I would say the first primary reason is Srila Prabhupada himself, because like I'm giving information. It's information because I'm not a self-realized soul. You should chant Hare Krishna. You should serve Krishna. Krishna is God, like an analogy, the whole body. And you, the living entity who's part and parcel of Krishna, you're like a hand of the body. The hand has to serve the body. It can't just pick up some food and that's the end. It's going to get nourished. It has to put the food in the mouth, and then it goes into the stomach, and then the energy is distributed to the hand. And the hand can't also be falsely charitable. And okay, I'll be charitable. I'll take the food and I'll put the food in the other hand and we'll both be happy. So that doesn't work. Everything has to go into the body, into the digestive system, and then the whole body gets nourished. So when I say it, I can't, like him, inspire you to just, wow, that's true. I need to serve him because I'm his part and parcel. Whereas he, being a self-realized soul, it's like if you're going to have a baby, the wife has to be a good receptacle, and the husband has to be potent. Otherwise, the impregnation doesn't happen. So because of who he was and is, his words stuck. And that's one thing. Also, the brilliance, absolute brilliance of his classes and personal exchanges. there are two kinds of Vedic literatures or scriptures. One is called Grantha Bhagavad, which means book Bhagavad. It's the book. And the book is, the information in the book has been coming down since time immemorial. And then 5,000 years ago, which was the beginning of the age of Kali Yuga, or the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, people's memories started dwindling. And so books began to be needed. So Krishna's literary incarnation, Vyasadeva, compiled all the Vedic literatures. And thousands of years later, the Goswamis, who were followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was Radha and Krishna combined, who came to start the Sankirtan movement, or the congregational chanting of the holy names. I've lost my place. The Goswamis continued making commentaries of the Srimad Bhagavatam and other Vedic literatures to give more and more deep meanings to the original Vedic texts. And so Prabhupada was presenting all those Grantha Bhagavats. And then he himself was the person Bhagavat. There's the book Bhagavat, and then the personification of those books, not just the learned scholar, but personification of the book. So he would speak, and he gave us translations of the ancient literatures, the 5,000-year-old wisdom books from India, and the 500-year-old ones from our Goswamis. So that had the potency as well. And then also, there was a little bit fear element, because when he spoke about hell, not like the Christian version of hell, but there are many hells, and you go to one for a while, another one, and gradually you become a human being again, and then not human. You have to go through, can you get this cycle of birth and death? You have to go through different species to finally become a human again. And so he would share that. He'd say, it's just like we're on a Ferris wheel. And the Ferris wheel, you're down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down. So we're transmigrating since the beginning of time, from hellish planets, heavenly planets. Sometimes we're demigods, sometimes we're animals. This is another painting I did in when was that? Maybe 1980 or 81. And each of the paintings have its own very long story and explanation. So that was that. And then, so because his words were impregnated with the reality, I immediately started believing in hell. And I was scared to go to hell. And so I wanted to follow the process. In the beginning, it's like that, because there are two kinds of bhakti. One is called Vaidhi Bhakti, and one is called Raganuga Bhakti. In the beginning, we do Vaidhi Bhakti, which means rules and regulations under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, for two reasons. One, out of it's my duty, like the hand serving the body. And two, if I don't do it, I'm going to have to be punished by the constables of death. And so there was some fear element, some duty element, and Raganuga Bhakti is a later stage where, under the guidance of the spiritual master, you serve not out of duty or fear, but you serve out of a great greed to follow in the footsteps of any of the associates of Krishna in the spiritual world. And just like a fish, if he's out of water, he can't live without the water. So you can give him a big dinner, and you can give him a soft bed, but he's going to be gasping for breath until he gets into that water. So this greed is like insatiable longing to become one of the associates. That one of the associates means at the time of creation, when Krishna created us, it's not really a time because we're all eternal, but we're using material language, so it's going to have some defects. So when Krishna created us, he put in our soul the seed of a particular relationship with him as a servant, in the motherly role, as a friend, and highest in an amorous role, not to become a lover of Krishna, but to become a maidservant of the supreme lover of Krishna, that is Radhika. So Raganuga Bhakti is the more developed stage of bhakti where you serve out of a longing. And there's so many prayers for achieving that pristine goal of becoming one of the associates under the guidance of his associates. So that also impelled me to go on. And we went out for Harinam Sankirtan, and we had his classes, and we would chant in the street and feel happy. And before I met Srila Prabhupada, I was unhappy. And I was thinking, I'm really unhappy. And how can I become happy? And I'm really, like, I don't really know anything. I was a university student at CCNY in New York, but I just began to realize I don't know anything. I'm not happy. I don't know anything. And what was the third one? Bliss, knowledge. Yes. And I have to die too. So that's temporality, ignorance, and it's the other one, temporality, ignorance, and unhappy. So one day when I was a secretary, like just a few months before I met Prabhupada, I was a secretary in one of the buildings in New York City. And I was on my lunch break, and on 42nd Street, there's so many people walking back and forth and this way and that way. And all of a sudden, I don't know why, I began thinking, where are they going to and coming from anyway? All this is described in my memoir of not only how I met Srila Prabhupada, but how I learned everything, painting and philosophy, and just how the Krishna consciousness movement developed from its beginning, because I joined practically at the beginning. So then, yeah, where are they coming from and going to? It's not just this life. And then on that same day, I asked my mother, Mom, if I wasn't born from your womb, would I still exist? Of course, she didn't know what to say. So all of a sudden, in one's life, from a previous lives or many previous lives, the thought starts coming again. So Prabhupada was promising, and I began to feel something opposite to temporality, ignorance, and misery. Krishna consciousness promised a life of the soul inside the body. You realize who you are, and then you have a life of eternity, full bliss, and unfathomable knowledge. So all that kept me going. And also he kept me off the streets by, he asked, what do I do? Like, do I have any talents? Am I a student, or what do I do? And he asked one of his brahmacharis or male disciples to ask me what I do. And I said, well, I consider myself an artist, but I'm not a very good one. In fact, when we had an art show at my university, a friend of mine came to it, and he said, which one is yours? And I said, well, which is the worst one here? And well, he picked mine. So I wasn't a good artist, but I loved it. So then he told Prabhupada that, and Prabhupada began to give me pictures to copy. Let me see if I can. If anybody doesn't know what he looks like, this is what Prabhupada looks like. So he began giving me paintings to do, starting from copying. If you can see that there.
That's up in the Boston Temple, that painting there.
Yeah, this one is not mine. This is one of the ones that he gave me to
Okay.
copy from India, that he brought from India with him. So if anybody would like to get this, I think there's a website called artofspirituallife.com. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely at the end and underneath the recording, we'll have a link for how
Okay,
people can stay in touch with you and get a copy of your book.
great.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so yeah, so all that kept me going.
Wow. There's so much that I want to ask. Could you but I guess, in the essence of your expertise and the service that you did for so many years, let's talk a little bit more about your service in art. And so, I mean, you joke, and I've read that in books as well. You joke about you weren't so great at the beginning, but what was it? Because all of us, in fact, some of our students just reached out recently, and they're looking for ways to be engaged in service. And how is that meaningful for you? And what was the experience like of developing your talent in artist and serving in that way and seeing the impact? And now there's tens of millions of books. All of us, most of us here have a copy of that Bhagavad Gita with your paintings. But would you just share a little bit? Because us newer on the path are looking for that way for us to give back and make a difference and serve. Just talk a little bit about your, I guess, developing the taste for that service.
Okay. Well, when a parent has a little baby and the little baby acts like a little baby, and then the parent says, "Oh, very intelligent, you're doing so good. And yes, you can walk. Let me hold your little fingers there." So that was one thing that kept me developing, was his encouragement. And then the second artist came and he asked, how did Yamarani be able to paint these pictures? And Prabhupada said, "I have taught her how to paint." And then he pretended to paint in the air. And he said, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare." In other words, by chanting, the talent comes out. So then later, a few years later, he said in the beginning she could not paint. So he had to change he used to tell me the paintings were so great. And now he said in the beginning she could not paint. But by hearing Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam with Sanskrit, which means hearing and chanting and remembering Krishna, the talent comes out. So that's how the development, because I don't know if you have the original Bhagavad Gita as it is, or the later version. Later version, the paintings are technically a lot better. In the beginning, they were somewhat crude, so I don't know which version you have. But everything developed so fast because he said these things, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, the talent came out. And I have taught her how to paint. So this goes for any talent or propensity. Then how did I feel when I was painting? Because just like Krishna is non-different from his name, Radha, Hare, is non-different from her name. So they're also non-different from their form. So I can't say that I'm self-realized or anything, but when I was painting, like I would be painting Narada Muni. Narada Muni is the eternal spaceman who, because of his self-realization, he plays a veena and he chants Hare Krishna, but where does he go? He goes all over the universe. He flies without any spaceship or helicopter or anything throughout the universe, throughout the planets, making millions of disciples and chanting Hare Krishna. There's the first painting that I did of Narada Muni, Prabhupada had me write at the bottom, Narada Muni Vajayavina Radhika Ramana Name. There's even a kirtan about it. Narada Muni Vajayavina Radhika Ramana Name. Perhaps you've heard it at the temple. So when I was painting Narada Muni, like even in his book, there was a chapter about Narada Muni. He'd write in his purport, Narada Muni, who has kindly appeared on the pages of this book. Similarly, I was actually feeling like the touch that he was actually there. So it was like a beautiful reciprocation. There was a lot of worry because how am I, a fallen, conditioned soul, able to bring the images from the spiritual world onto the painting? I asked Prabhupada once, how can I paint better and faster? Because as the time went on, and I was just painting for his temples at first. Every time a temple was open, I would do the paintings for that. And then I started painting for his books. So more and more paintings, and then a few other artists joined and we were painting together. But I wasn't satisfied with the speed. And I said, how can I paint more quickly and better? So he said, just pray to Krishna that you can paint faster and better, and he will give you the intelligence to do so. And then when we became a team, when more artists joined, we became a team in 1969 to paint for his books together. But none of us were satisfied because we were aware of the amazing, like, descent of his books, how they came from the spiritual world. And our talent was so flimsy. So we were thinking of, and we were on a marathon because the Krishna book, you know, the Krishna book, of course, had to come out very quickly. You know, in America, there was so much dissatisfaction among the people, you know, strikes at university graduations because of the segregation and the blacks at the back of the bus and all that crazy stuff. And so, and there were riots, and yeah, it was a famous historical time back in the 60s. And so the Krishna book had to get out right away. And the Gita had to get out right away. And then the Bhagavatams had to get out right away. So there was so much pressure, lovely pressure, to get the paintings out quickly. And so we were dissatisfied. So we wrote, the few artists that were there at the time, we wrote to Prabhupada and asked if we could stop the marathon for a while and go to art school so we could develop more like the old masters, how they painted so realistically, perfect lighting. So Prabhupada wrote back that if your house is on fire and your neighbor doesn't speak the language, your language, then you don't have to take the time, or you wouldn't take the time to learn the language of your neighbor. You just fire, 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 come, anything to get their attention and bring them over to help. So Prabhupada said, don't. He said, just by painting, that will be your real schooling, and Krishna will give you the intelligence to paint better and better. I don't know if that answers the question.
That does. It's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I see questions are coming in queue, but I'm going to ask one more question just before we take some audience Q&A. Would you share with us, Syamarani, What tips would you have for us? So again, I was saying before we went live, I see scholars on the call who are purely looking at this from an intellectual academic perspective, and beautiful that they're engaging these texts. Of course, we have devotees on the call who are living it and practicing bhakti yoga. And the great majority of the audience are, yogis, yoga teachers, spiritual seekers. Somehow we're called to this, this tradition of bhakti, but we're quite new. And what would you offer us? What would you leave us with, as we kind of move forward on our spiritual path? What would you share?
Well, I'm so happy to see all of you here. I'm so happy to be meeting with you and meeting you. There's a verse in one of the ancient scriptures, Harinama, Harinamer, Harinam eva kevalam, kalo nastyeva, 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 gatir anyata, which means that in this age of Kali, the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, where people have short lives, they're lazy, misguided, unlucky, and always disturbed. The only remedial measure for God realization and self-realization is chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. There's no other way, no other way, no other way. So there are many processes like yoga. Some are yogis here, and that yoga has its place in terms of making the body more flexible, perhaps making the mind more peaceful, being more grounded, being stronger. But what it doesn't do is give us self-realization. This, in this day and age, everybody says, if you do this, you'll be self-realized without exactly knowing what the self is. Misidentifying the body or the mind or my thinking or my emotions to be my soul. But the soul is completely different from the body. The body is a bag of pus, blood, stool, and urine, bones, and things like that. I just declined. Somebody's trying to call. Okay. Where the soul is a spark, but not an impersonal spark. We have a beautiful spiritual form, and that form is forever. It doesn't get old. It doesn't die. It's forever new. And not only is it new, but it gets newer and newer all the time. So we want to realize that soul, and there's so much information about the soul in the Gita and in other Vedic literatures. So whatever we're doing, whatever process we have, whether we're scholars or whether we're yogis or whether we're devotees, I think the best tip is to be chanting Hare Krishna as much as possible. We have beads. If anybody doesn't know about them, we chant on beads, which engages the sense of touch, additionally to chanting without beads, which engages the tongue and the mind and the tongue and the mind. But this engages an extra sense, the sense of touch, which helps us to engage the mind more. And speaking about Krishna from the Vedic literatures, repeating what we've heard in classes, just somehow or other connecting with that reality as much as it's comfortable for us, and associating with devotees. We can associate in this wonderful day of internet. There are so many like doom scrolling bad things about it, but there are also great things about it. Like I can hear so many kirtans on so many different stations. I can hear classes of great devotees. And if I'm near, I'm hearing at the beginning that you're having listeners from South Africa and Carolina and all over the place. So however I can associate on whatever level. And for those of you who are so inclined, if it's possible to be vegetarian, because my Shiksha Guru, who I didn't talk about much, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, he gives an analogy or example about meat. Meat is M-E-A-T, meat, which if you stretch it out, it's me, eat. Whoever I'm eating now, they will come back and eat me, and I will be that animal in the future. And if I've done that for many animals, then they're standing on line. I'm next, I'm next. And in many, many births, I will fall down from this long journey from lower species. Finally, I become a human being. And then you can see that this human being is testing out the water. The water is the symbolic ocean of birth and death. And the mountains here represent that it's just not possible to get out of this cycle unless I take to bhakti and chanting and things like that. But so he is putting his foot into the, when you go to the beach and you put your foot into the water, seeing how it is, can I jump in or not? Mm-hmm. So he's doing that. And then he'll have wasted his human form of life if he's dabbling in the activities that an animal does, which is simply gross sense gratification. And then he will have wasted that precious time. So if it's possible, be vegetarian, who's ever not, and even the mind becomes clearer, our heart becomes purer. And then my vegetarian food, have a little plate and put it in front of a picture of Krishna and chant Hare Krishna, or if you know any mantras, never eat. Like it's like stealing, because everything belongs to Krishna. And if Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that if anybody offers food to me, then I relieve him from the reactions to all past miserable activities, which extends my life in various species. Hope I'm not getting too complex. And those who fail to do so, but eat only for their own personal enjoyment, they're verily eating only sin. Hope I'm not getting too heavy there. Okay, there's a couple of tips.
That's great. That's great. I appreciate that you speak your truth. You've received it from great acharyas and shiksha gurus and diksha gurus, and you've lived it for many decades, and it's very evident that you believe it. And I know for myself, I'm developing that conviction and developing that shraddha, that faith. So thank you for sharing. There's so many more things that I'd love to inquire about, but let's take an audience question here. Let's get Sarah and George. Team UK, welcome.
Hare Krishna.
That was really exciting. I'm going to have to go and find my Bhagavad Gita as it is and have a good scroll through later.
Yes.
I guess I had a question because you spent a lot of time sort of in the very early days of ISKCON, and I'm working my way through the Srimad Bhagavatam at the moment. And I've spoken to a couple of other people who've been women in the movement, and I just wanted to know, because I'm reading the book and there's a fairly old-fashioned way of treating women in the purports and in the text, and yet it seems to be that women were treated and are still treated quite equally in the movement. I just wanted to know your experience about that.
Oh, thank you. That's a very good question, because several devotees or people who read the Bhagavad Gita think that Srila Prabhupada is putting down women by saying, just as a child needs protection and shouldn't be given independence. So with women, that's there, I think, in this second or first chapter. So I compiled a 13-page document to prove that that is really a misinterpretation. So how is it? Why would women need protection? They're not as strong as men. And what would they need protection from? Men. It says there that women are misguided by unscrupulous men. So who's worse? And then there's so many things that he says about men. Swavid varahoshrakarai samstutak purushat param. That men who are opposed to the narrations of Krishna, who plays a flute, Gadagraja, they're no better than hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, and he explains why. So he'll speak against anybody who's not Krishna conscious, because without Krishna consciousness, we're not conscious. I'm not conscious of who I am, who anybody else is, and therefore the first verse of the Shikshastakam, which is the 8-verse song by Lord Chaitanya himself, who is Krishna himself in the mood of a devotee. The first verse is Cheto Darpanamarjanam Pavamahadavagni Nirvapanam, means that the mirror, the darpan, the mirror of the heart, the first result of chanting is that the mirror of the heart is cleansed, and I can see myself as I am. If you're in front of a mirror that's full of dust, A to Z, you look at the dust and then, oh, I'm dust. Oh my God, that's terrible. And so many people hate themselves and, oh, I'm not good enough, and that whole thing there. So I become free from the bodily conception of life. Then the next verse says that I start feeling ecstatic symptoms. So we're neither men nor women. That's the first thing. Sometimes we're men and sometimes we're women. But he puts down anybody. He puts down, you'll see if anybody wants this 13-page document that I didn't write it, I compiled it, of seeing Prabhupada in a completely different way about women. He puts down scientists. He puts down professors. Puts down universities. But when he puts down women, that's terrible. He puts down women. That's all we see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, is that helpful?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, and that would be great. Well, I'll connect with Vasanti, and it'd be great to have that 13-page document. I know a lot in our community would be very curious to read this. Well, let's send some love, gratitude, high vibes over to Sarah George, Kent, UK. Thank you. And we got time for one more. Let's get Raghava Prabhu on the line. Welcome.
Oh, that's our Raghava.
Hare Krishna, Syamarani Didi, Dandavats, and Happy Jack. So nice. And I just want to say a few words of appreciation for you doing this. And also to Syamarani Didi for just tirelessly continuing to, support and inspire the devotees and setting an example with her own devotional service, which never seems to stop. It's just like honey coming from a jar. It's like never ending. It never ends. And so just wanted to give my little love and appreciation here. And Jack, we spent some time in England at the Tony Robbins Business Mastery. When I was wearing the beads, and you were like, "Hey, are you a Hare Krishna?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I've been to Vrindavan and all of that." I don't know if you remember, but that was in 2017 or so, I think, at the Business Mastery. I think in London it was.
That's incredible. 2016 London or 2017 Amsterdam. We got to connect. I can't believe that.
Either Amsterdam or London, but I'm not sure. But you stood out, so it was nice. So seeing you do this right now is really truly amazing. Coming like full circle. So
Well,
it's,
do you realize 1 hour from now, Tony Robbins' wife, Sage Robbins, is our next speaker?
I
So how's
know I
that for a
saw.
Krishna
Yeah,
miracle?
I've got it marked here on my calendar.
Wow.
So, but yeah. So anyway, so thank you so much for doing this. I think you're inspiring a lot of people, and Shamarani Didi, so grateful for the connection and the continuous service opportunities.
Thank you for your kind words.
And one thing about the ladies, you know, like Prabhupada, he took a lot of criticism from fellow Hindus and religionists for breaking the rules because he allowed women to do pujari work, which is usually only reserved for men and Brahmins, and to cook for the deities and all of these things. That Prabhupada was a revolutionary, and he completely broke down those walls and those like stupid religious ideas that women are lesser or unqualified, or even white people aren't qualified to serve Krishna or to do temple worship and all these things. And so that's the spirit of Srila Prabhupada. You know, he broke all those concepts that just stop us from like really truly living our dharma and surrendering to Krishna and just completely going beyond our bodily designation, that we are not female, man, or even humans. We are really spiritual souls that are finding our way home. And so, yeah, that I just wanted to add that. So thank you so much for the
And
opportunity.
thanks for mentioning again about the women, because, I was hearing that also when I first joined from some of the brahmacharis. And so I was feeling bad that because I'm a girl, I was 19, I can't advance as quickly as the men. So we told that to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, yes, if you think you're a girl, how can you advance? If you think you're a woman, how can you advance?
Yeah.
Don't think that.
Mm. We're pure spirit souls, all of us.
Yeah. Vasandi wanted me to, she's pushing me to mention this again.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to get a copy of that. I didn't realize that was available.
I can bring you one when I come up to Boston at the end of the month.
Oh, that would be amazing. Definitely look me up. I would love to meet. Thank you. Well, let's send some love, appreciation. Raghava, where are you calling in from right now?
I'm in Connecticut.
You're in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Well, we're sending
And I
our
hope he'll come down to Miami soon. I keep asking him.
amazing. Well, thank you so much, Prabhu, for sharing. And what a
Thanks.
gift to reconnect.
Yes, absolutely.
We must reconnect. I was not into bhakti at all in 2016, 2017. So, but I had been to Vrindavan synchronistically. We must connect. But Syamarani, Didi, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I want to be respectful for your time, and we're up. But we're going to share a link under the recording so everybody can connect through your website, get a copy of your book. And hopefully, and if you're in the Miami area or you can get there, come down and visit the beautiful community there. But thank you so much for being.
Can I take a minute to show you our deities?
Please, yes.
Okay. They're just a few feet away.
Wow.
The computer.
Oh, that's right.
Oh wait.
Oh, that's right. We're on.
Oh wait. No,
Zoom.
no. This is sorry. I'm confused. I got
Okay.
confused.
All right.
Wow.
Wait.
Oh my, look at those.
We have a lot of
paintings.
original. Those are original paintings we did for Srila Prabhupada.
Wow.
And here's our altar.
Wow.
On Raman Bihari. And then
Wow.
we have more original paintings.
Oh my goodness. And just for those who don't know, like the Boston Temple, it doesn't, it has a similar vibe because there's so many beautiful paintings like that up, and they all have 95% of them have your name under them. So you're a living legend. Thank you so much, Syamarani, Didi, Vasanti, for helping to organize. We're sending all of our love, gratitude to you down in Miami. And friends, if you're available, we have one more session today in an hour. We'd love to welcome you. And until we meet again, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Any service I can do in the future,
Krishna.
let me know.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Shamarani.
Hare Bo.
Hare
Thank you all
Krishna.
for being here.